Alexa, how much is it? Technological progress is making inflation statistics an unreliable guide to the economy. Amazon is used to fielding accusations that it has killed off physical retail business, that it mistreats warehouse workers, that it abuses its dominant platform in online sales. So it's not a surprise that some people also blame it for low inflation. In 2017, Janet Yellen, then chair of the Federal Reserve, wondered aloud if cutthroat online competition may be stopping goods producers raising prices even in a world of rising demand. A guy at the Harvard University has found that Amazon prices are 5% lower than those of retailers, eight large retailers, and 5% lower than on those retailers' websites. The internet generally is no place to go in search of inflation. In America, online prices have been falling fairly steadily since about 2012 and are lower than they were at the turn of the millennium. Yet the so-called Amazon effect should not seem so knowable. The winds of disinflation have been blowing through American retail for decades. In the 1990s and 2000s, big box retailers like Walmart and Target cut ruthlessly cut their goods prices, as they optimize their supply chains. Cheap imports from China and other emerging market economies squeeze domestic producers. A study found that low-wage countries capturing 1% of the market share in America were associated with a 3.1% fall in producer prices. There has been barely any cumulative rise in American consumer goods prices, except food and energy for two decades, before the financial crisis. Inflation as a whole behaved normally as service inflation held up. But today, goods and service inflation were low. The rise of online retail, does not easily explain that broader shift. Nonetheless, technological advance is a disinflationary force worth pondering. At a basic level, it allows an economy to produce more with its finite resources. As the aggregate, if aggregate demand does not keep up, prices will fall, or at least not rise as fast. The idea that inflation has been low lately because productivity growth has been strong seems laughable everywhere except Silicon Valley, because economic statistics have documented a global slowdown in productivity growth. Yet there's an argument that technological advances that there's an argument that statisticians fail to capture some technological advances making productivity seem lower and inflation higher than they really are. The basic concern is a long-standing one. It takes because it takes a while for statisticians to notice that consumers are buying new products. They miss precipitous price falls early in a product's life. It is also hard to tell how much better new products are than what went before. In today's economy, the missed value comes from smartphone communication, smartphone, social media, and online streaming. Spencer Hill, an economist at Goldman Sachs, recently calculated that the measured growth in the consumption of personal electronics, communications, and media were lower in 2010s than any of the five preceding decades. That was despite the fact that in 1990 it would have. That was despite the fact that in 1990 it would have taken $3,000 to replicate a simple basic function, to replicate even the basic function of a modem phone, and only by using very bulky devices. In real terms, consumption in this category is surely soaring. The statistics must be missing something. Because statisticians are constantly battling the problem. But a review of America's inflation indices in 2018 by Brent Molson, a former top government official, estimated that the inflation index targeted by the Fed remained upwardly biased by almost half a percentage point, primarily because new products and quality change. The shift to online sales could be making new product bias worse. A paper by Austin and Peter of Stanford University found that even excluding clothing, for which tastes are fickle, 44% of online sales in a database produced by Adobe Analytics, a computing company, were of goods that did not exist in the prior year. With such high churn, the basket of goods monitored by official statisticians would quickly go stale. They have, for some categories of goods, helped Adobe Analytics to construct digital consumer index, its own digital price index, which shows much less inflation than official measures. For example, they find that furniture and bedding fell in price by almost 12% online between 2004 and 2009, while the official statistics consumer price index fell. Price index records a fall of only 2.1%. A bigger problem than falling prices is products that are zero at the start from the start. Prices that are zero from the start. Most consumers today carry devices in their pockets with which they can make a video call everywhere in the world. Have access information on any subject, and translate language instantly, all for free. The explosion of the provision of the free services. The explosion of the provision of free services is usually cited as a reason to doubt the accuracy of GDP. That is as big a problem for that is as big a problem for that is as big a problem for inflation. First, free service seems sometimes replace ones that were previously paid for, which puts new product buyers on steroids. Second, if consumers derive a greater share of their well-being from things that come free, inflation ceases to be a good measure of the cost of living and of the purchasing power of incomes. The value of nothing. Measuring the price of something and the value to and measuring its value to customer are two different tasks. Eric M of MIT and two co-authors have run experiments in an attempt to do the latter. They asked 33,000 online participants what they would need to be paid to give up Facebook for a month, offering to enforce the deal for a few randomly selected participants using Facebook features that revealed to friends when they when somebody last logged on. The median response was $42. About a fifth of users quoted somewhere near $1,000. In another experiment, they struck similar deal. They struck similar agreement with the participants at a Dutch university, enforcing the contract by getting users to change their passwords, in effect locking themselves out of their accounts, so or to submit to monitoring of their electronic devices. The median figure participants quoted to give up mapping services for a month was about 59 euros or $64. For WhatsApp, it was $536. In another paper, he and his colleagues asked consumers what they would need to be paid to forego free online search engines for a year. The median response was over $17,500. These figures can mislead. People will also fear the social isolation that would come from being cut off. That would come from being cut off from the predominant communications technology of the day, whether it's telephone, text, or TikTok. Inflation and GDP were never intended to measure consumer. Inflation never intended to measure consumer welfare. Some free services are displacing activity which has never been counted in GDP, like casual matchmaking. Free services funded by advertising are not new. Radio and television has been around a long time, and advertising is only small relative to the economy. John of the San Francisco Fed argues that many of the consumer benefits from modern technology are conceptually no-market, yet the line between the market and no-market services is hazy. Imputed rent, the money homeowners would pay to rent a house, equivalent to the one they own, is included in inflation and GDP, despite not representing any market transaction. In another recent paper, David of the Federal Reserve and Carroll of the Conference Board Business Group argued that smartphones, broadband connections, and Netflix subscriptions should be viewed as investments that variable dividends over time, depending on how intensively they use it. How intensively they are used, armed with trends in data usage and time use surveys. They constructed quality adjusted price index for digital access services, that shows price falling by 20% between 2007 and 2017. The official price index for internet access, by contrast, shows prices up by 4.5% over the same period. The fact that inflation may be even lower than is expected is in one respect good news. It means that growth in productivity growth in living standard has been underrated, has been understated, But it is troublesome for some central bankers who are already undershooting their inflation targets. Moreover, the justification for target inflation in the first place rests on the notion that the number is a meaningful representation of the economic experiences of the public and firms. The more economic activity shifts into a domain where price is a slippery concept, the weaker the link will become. And there's another source of breakdown in economists' understanding of how prices are formed. Globalization.